Hi, and welcome to my channel. Or if you're a returning subscriber, hi again. It's so nice to see you back here for another video. My name's Tess Lark, and today I'm going to show you how you can use epoxy resin, holographic foils, and some mica powder to make these really cool Halloween-themed necklaces. Spooky season is just around the corner, and it's one of my favorite times of year, so I thought it'd be really fun to make some Halloween-themed jewelry. Really quickly, before we get started, I would just like you to know that I will have all of the materials used for this project linked in the description below. So if anybody's interested in trying this project for themselves, all that information will be down there for you. Don't forget to give this video a like and also subscribe because I do post weekly. And I will not chat your ear off, but let's hop right into today's project. To save some time in this project, I went ahead and I pre-mixed 20 milliliters of resin. And again, I will have all the materials that I use for this project linked in the description below. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of that resin and section it out into a couple different small cups so I can start making my colors for the backgrounds of these necklaces. The mica powder that I'll be using today is all by Arteza, and I'm going to start with their spring green and just using a popsicle stick to add a little bit of this to one of my cups of resin. And I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I thoroughly mix in that color, scraping both the sides and the bottom of my container as I go. Then I'll move on to my white, and I'm using the Sage Glow by Arteza as well. Again, same process, just mixing that up. And whenever you're mixing your pigment into your resin, the general rule of thumb is 10% pigment to 90% resin. Anything more than that and your piece may not cure correctly. So moving on to my red, and that is the Raspberry Red mica powder. And then after a quick hit with the heat gun to pop any of those bubbles, I'm going to start layering my colors into my pendant blinks. And as you can see throughout different parts of this project, I will be using my heat gun. Again, that's to pop any of those bubbles. So layering some more colors into my second pendant blink, and when I'm layering these colors in, I do want a pretty thin layer just coating the bottom because I will be adding a top coat onto these, so I don't want them to be too full so that they overfill when I try to top coat them. So just sort of using gravity to move that pigment around in there just to make sure that I've got the back of my pendant completely covered. And then for the two pendants that I have multicolored, I'm going to go ahead and use a popsicle stick just to break up that line a little bit and get the transition between the colors to be a little bit softer. And just a quick reminder, if you're liking this video so far, please don't forget to give it a like. And so I ran out of resin, so I went ahead and I mixed up 10 milliliters more. Into that, I'm going to add some of this tangerine orange mica powder. I'd also like to note that because these pieces are so small, I am using a popsicle stick instead of pouring the resin directly in, just to have a little bit more control, especially when I'm using two different colors. And after I've got my first layer of resin in each one of my pieces, I'll go ahead and hit these once more with a heat gun before covering them up and allowing them to cure. And they don't need to cure completely, so you don't need to let them sit for 24 hours, but they do need to be pretty well set up. I'd go ahead and let them cure for about 6 to 10 hours before moving on. So next I've got my holographic foils here, and I'm going to just start by cutting them out. And when you're cutting your foils, you want to make sure you're cutting as close to the image as possible without cutting any of the actual image itself off. And again, because these pieces are so small, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that the image is lining up well in the piece, and I want to make sure that I'm cutting off any little corners that are going to stick out of the piece. And then I'll just repeat the same process, again trying to get as close to that image as I can and making sure that they all fit nicely into their little frames. And it's obviously okay to cut a little bit of the image itself off if you need to make it work, just as long as the picture still makes sense when you're done. And because the top of our friend Jason here is so wide, I already know I'm going to have to put him at quite an angle. So I'm really trying to get really close to that image to make sure that his axe fits in. So if you see that, pretty slanted, so I'm going to go ahead and cut off a good amount of his torso. I'm sorry, Jason, it has to be done. Also, before I started cutting these guys out, I went ahead and I mixed up another 20 milliliters of resin, and we'll be using that to top coat our pieces. Also, just a really quick reminder that when you are working with resin, make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area, open those windows, turn on those air filters, and wear an N95 or a respirator mask when you're working with larger pieces. You'll also want to protect your working space using either a silicone mat like I'm using today or some waxed paper. So I've got all of my foils set inside of their pendants, and now I'm just going to go ahead and take some of that clear resin and carefully top coat each one of these pieces. And I really love the resin that I'm using right now. It's Naked Fusion resin, it's their artist resin, and I find that it's very forgiving and it also domes really nicely. But because the way the tops of these pendants are, I quickly noticed that they were sort of slanted down one way, which was causing the resin to pool at the bottoms. So I just took a small piece of waxed paper and I made a little crutch just to elevate the bottom of the pieces so that the resin wouldn't pool at the bottom and be uneven or potentially spill over the side. Sorry for the craftception, gotta feed the gram, okay, bye. But on a more serious note, because these pieces are so small, it's best to pour a little bit of resin in at first and then just use a clean popsicle stick to sort of work that around to the edges. Again, you really don't want to overfill these pieces because it'll be really hard to get the cured resin off of the backs if you do. And if you are liking this video, I do have a ton of other resin tutorials, so make sure to check those out after you're finished with this one. After we've got all of our pieces top coated, we'll go ahead and cover them up again and let them cure completely before we put them onto chains and make them into wearable pieces of jewelry. So after letting the resin set up overnight, these are nice and cured. They've got beautiful domes on them. They're really nice and smooth. They're like clear, just like glass, and they look really cool. Let me know which character is your favorite down below in the comments. And to make these into necklaces, I've got some chain here along with a measuring tape, and then I've got some lobster clasps and some jump rings in different sizes. I'm going to start out by laying my measuring tape flat down on my working surface, and then I'm going to line the chain up with that. And I decided that I wanted these to be 19 inches long, so I'm just going to use a pair of chain cutters and cut out 5 lengths of 19 inches. And the pendant bezels that I'm using today already have that little loop built into the top, so I'm just going to go ahead and start by putting that chain right through that loop. Then I'll use 2 pairs of pliers to open up my smallest jump ring, and to that I'm going to attach my lobster claw. And I like the clasp to face my body as I'm putting it onto the chain. So then I'm going to go ahead and string that small jump ring through one end of that chain, the chain on the right hand side, and then using those jewelry pliers, I'm just going to go ahead and close that jump ring. And then I'll open a larger jump and attach an even larger jump ring to that. And to the left hand side of the chain, I'll go ahead and attach that jump ring using my pliers to make sure that's closed nice and tight. And then we'll just go ahead and repeat that process for our other pieces. And I'm so curious, do you guys have Halloween plans? Do you know what you're going to be for Halloween? Are you going to dress up? Do you even celebrate Halloween? Do you like Halloween? Let me know what your plans are down below. So now we've got all of our pieces finished up. They're all on chains and they are wearable pieces of jewelry. And I think my favorites are probably the Bride of Frankenstein, Jason, and also this mummy. But let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite. As always, friends, thank you so much for being here and thank you for spending part of your day with me. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me some sort of Halloween theme emoji in the comments so that I know that it's real. I really hope that this video inspires you to make something of your own today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!